Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live streamed edition of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I am your host, Niko House. Now, some of you probably have noticed at this point that it is a little bit earlier than usual. And that's okay. That's okay. So for those who tuned in earlier than usual, I greatly appreciate it. Good morning. I've already had my coffee, or else I wouldn't be doing this right now. I'm one of those people who I absolutely cannot function before I have coffee. Like, I'm not exaggerating. When I was on vacation, I actually slept for about 2 to 3 hours out of the day merely because I hadn't had coffee in the morning when I first woke up. So that's like my requisite before I talk about any politics, before I talk about any sports. Good morning. I hope you already had breakfast. I hope you shared this video. And let's go ahead and get started. So, I heard the news. I heard the news that John McCain had passed away. Now, you might have, it might sound like I left something out when I said this because, well, if you've been reading the mainstream media, rank and file Democrats, Republicans, establishment everywhere, you probably have read the word unfortunate before passed away in regards to John McCain's recent death. John McCain's unfortunately passed away. John McCain is unfortunately not with us anymore. It is unfortunate that we lost such a great patriot, a great hero. Now, I'm not really into the celebration of anyone's death. I'm not. First of all, I think that brings bad juju. I think that it's just bad karma to wish absolute death on anyone. I don't believe that's my place as a human being. I am about the preservation of life, if at all possible, and I'm definitely not about senseless death or like death of retribution. I'm not that type of person. However, I am also a realist. I am also a pragmatist, and because I am a humanist, because I am anti-war, because I am pro-peace, and because I'm grounded in this thing called reality, I absolutely refuse. I refuse to shed one single tear for John McCain. Now, before I go into my personal analysis, I want to read something from you. Tyler Durden of Zero Hedge did a fantastic job of giving a pretty decent summary of what John McCain has been responsible for in the past. Essentially, which most of you probably are not surprised at this point, John McCain has not seen a war that he has not liked. Okay, you want to come up? You want to pull up? No. There we go. There we go. So, we can start with Afghanistan and Iraq. Durden writes, obviously, every U.S. senator, besides California's Barbara Lee, voted to give President George W. Bush the power to invade Afghanistan following the events of September 11th. However, McCain wasn't happy with just moving to invade Afghanistan. No, he had other targets in mind. As early as the day after the towers fell, despite McCain's claim in 2014 that the Iraq War was probably wouldn't happen if he had won the 2000 Republican primary, because people forget that he did run in 2000, and in the general election, which kind of like goes back to that whole idea that we always discuss with Hillary. It's these people feel like they are promised these positions, that they are entitled to them. So they continue to run because they have agendas that they are paid to complete. If you are seen as a presidential hopeful and you have capitulated to the deep state, or at the very minimum have taken their money in large amounts, then they will tell you to run and run and run and run until you cannot run anymore, quite literally. So it's no surprise there that McCain has also had multiple runs, just like Joe Biden will likely have another run, even though he got the floor wiped with him in 2007 and 2008. But essentially, what Dirt in the Search is that on September 12th, 2001, McCain appeared on MSNBC presenting a long list of countries that he felt were safe harbor to groups like Al-Qaeda. The list, of course, included Iraq and several other countries. Go ahead. I know you want to take a guess. Because if you've been watching this show, if you watch Jimmy, if you watch even Jamaro, if you watch any of my favorites, Tim, we talk about these countries all the time. So, these countries were included, but not limited to Syria, Libya, West Africa countries, Central African countries like Sudan, Bosnia, Kosovo, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, North Korea, and China. And he's one of those Vietnam veteran Republicans. So like China is a bad word for him. Russia is a explicative for him. So the first one listed is Syria, and I want to address this. McCain was trying to jump on the Syria bandwagon in 2001. Now, many of you have watched this show, and you know that I grew up around a special forces city. We were like one of the homes of 7th Group. Now, they had plenty of homes. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but we were one of their main homes. Pretty much after 7th Group came back from Panama, came back from Trinidad and Tobago, and Southern Command moved to Miami. Fort Bragg was mostly the home of 7th Group. We had other special forces groups as well, like 3rd Group on Fort Bragg. They were actually invading Libya for quite some time. In fact, I remember a family member of mine bringing Libyan money and Libyan art back to the States. And I had no idea why he was in Africa. I didn't know what Libya was at the time. I didn't know who Gaddafi was at the time. But understand something. This wasn't in 2004. This wasn't in 2007. This wasn't in 2012. This was in the 1990s. We have been trying to dethrone Gaddafi for over at that point, 2 decades. We've been trying to bring siege to Libya for 3 decades. And now that we've finally done it, remember they said that everything would get better the moment Gaddafi was gone. Essentially what John McCain was trying to assert as well. But we don't hear about it anymore, do we? Now here's what's interesting about this. McCain, not just McCain, by the way, but we're talking about McCain. McCain said he listed several countries, but Libya and Syria are the ones that stand out to me the most. And there's another country that did not stand out. And I think that many of you, I've seen people tweeting about this. Where's Saudi Arabia at? Where's Saudi Arabia? Anybody notice that? Like I said, Syria was one of the countries listed. Libya, West African countries, Central African countries like Sudan, Iran, Iraq, China, and Russia. Gotta throw those in there for good measure. But Saudi Arabia, which is literally the birthplace of Osama bin Laden, I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. Osama bin Laden is from Saudi Arabia. He is part of Saudi Arabian royal family, and we don't have to guess whether or not it would be a harboring space. Like, I'm not assuming this without intel. Osama bin Laden worked for us. He was part of the CIA. So we know this. We've known this. We know the people that he's worked with, that his higher ups were also Saudi Arabian. We know that Saudi Arabia funds terrorism all the time. But McCain, conveniently enough, didn't list Saudi Arabia. And it seems like the countries that he listed are, what a coincidence, oil rich. They're, of course, and as always, people of color. Iran, that you have no idea. I don't want to go into too much detail about Iran, but the fact that Iran is listed, people, Iran is a very westernized nation. They don't harbor terrorists. I'm not saying that a terrorist didn't get in, but what I am saying is that they don't harbor them. The chance of Iran harboring terrorists is as equal as Israel harboring terrorists. As in, there may be terrorists living there, but that doesn't mean the government is protecting them. Iran is scared shitless of the United States of America. One of the best presidents that they had didn't even get to last a year because we sent our CIA in the moment that he tried to nationalize the oil supply. But Iran made the list. Yet, there are terrorists that were homegrown in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia didn't make the list. Now, for these reasons and many more, I will not celebrate the death of John McCain, but I will absolutely not shed a tear. And I believe that there should be people allowed, if they choose to give their condolences. I'm not going to infringe on that. But John McCain advocated for taking Native American land in southwestern United States. His family advocated for this. John McCain is responsible, or at least partially responsible, and had an active hand in the murder. I want to be very clear about this. The murder of millions of people overseas. Millions of defenseless people. Even the very idea that because a country may have harbored terrorists, not absolutely, but may have harbored terrorists, like may have, the idea that we can invade that country, the idea that we can carpet bomb that country, the idea that we can go up, walk into a government or federal building in that particular nation, point at that person with a Desert Eagle and shoot them in the head, saying that we need an entire regime change because you may have held one or two terrorists, is absolute insanity. Do you understand this? But essentially, that's what John McCain was calling for. He was calling for regime change in all of these nations. He was literally saying, yeah, they may have terrorists. Let's go regime change. You're killing almost, and this, once again, people, this is not an exaggeration. I was in the military, okay? This is not news to anybody. I was part of an intelligence brigade where it was our job to kind of gather this stuff. Although I was a paralegal, obviously, I was in a lot of the briefings because we have to prep to deploy. I was never going to deploy, though. I don't believe in killing innocent people, okay? Nor do I believe in the racial slurs that we were being coerced into calling these innocent people. Hajis and rap, we call them turban heads. Oh, man, it was bad. It was bad. But when I tell you this is not an exaggeration, please believe me. Almost every single person that we killed in Iraq was innocent. Almost every single person that we killed in Afghanistan was innocent. Almost every single one of them. That is why so many soldiers and sailors and Marines have come back with such extreme PTSD. Because it's hard to have the death of innocents on your conscience. The problem is, McCain never had to fire that gun. McCain is not a war hero because he got kidnapped. I'm not diminishing like the idea of somebody got caught during World War II, you know, like, and they fought their way out and they handled that's heroic. He got caught. He got real. Like, I want to be very honest and realistic here. He got caught during Vietnam. We shouldn't have been there. We shouldn't have been there. It's fortunate that he was able to escape for him and his family. But that does not make him a hero. If I was caught during Vietnam, as much as I would like to be called a hero, that does not make me so. It is not the idea that the colonizer, because that's pretty much what we were, the idea that because a colonizer got held captive as a soldier of an empire, the idea that because he escaped, because he was injured, that makes him a hero is absolute lunacy. And only in the United States of America would we consider that heroic. Only in this Orwellian dystopian country that we, in this era of just propagandist imperialist media, would we ever consider once again a soldier of the empire who was going to a country to oppress a hero because he got away. Like I said, it's fortunate for McCain. It is fortunate for his family that he got away. Like I said, I never celebrate the death of anybody. But the hero, if we're looking at it from an objective, altruistic perspective, the hero was the person who captured McCain, because that was one more colonizer, one more oppressor who was not going to be able to kill their families, their friends. That altruistically was the hero, the person who caught McCain, not McCain for being released. McCain fought for the empire. Then when he came back to the empire, he advocated to send more soldiers to their death, to send more soldiers to potentially be captured. McCain is no hero. Let's get this perfectly clear. And that is coming from a veteran. McCain is absolutely not a hero. And no disrespect to Bernie Sanders. No disrespect to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. No disrespect to the no disrespect to Tulsi, even though I don't think she's said anything about him yet. But when we just exonerate the debt, like we exonerate the name of somebody who was directly or indirectly responsible for the deaths of millions and the perpetuation of a very dangerous empire. What we are doing is continuing this cyclical propagandist mechanism that has just allowed the George Bushes to have kids and then come into power again. The Clintons to have kids who will eventually come into power again. The Reagans to be celebrated as if they are something to celebrate. Because when somebody dies, we forget about everything that they've done. No, I'm not saying celebrate. But I'll be damned if I shed a tear And if you are a populist, if you are anti-war, if you are pro-peace, then you should not be shedding tears either. Absolutely not. Could you imagine that an author, a monger of death, imagine if you lived in Iraq. Imagine if you were an Iraqi citizen and you see the person who's responsible for the death of your family die on the television screen. And you see all these politicians who say they have your best interests at heart celebrating them. Imagine you see these tweets going out celebrating him. And you're just angered and frustrated to the point of tears because you cannot believe the cognitive dissonance, the total situational apathy, the lack of humanity, all in the name of what? Of what? Professionalism? Common courtesy, I guess? For what? This man's responsible for killing your family. This man's responsible for starting a war in your country or there's not that many senators, people. Remember that. There's not that many senators that get to go on TV and publicly advocate for the destruction of your country. And there are people celebrating it, tweeting about it, while you have to still visit the graves of your dad and your brother or your mom, your grandparents, your friends. That is what John McCain looks like to these people who have lost their lives or the lives of their family members. That is what these tweets look like. I don't want to call them mourning, calling John McCain a hero. It's a lie. Faith virtue is perfectly stated. They called MLK a domestic terrorist and John McCain a hero. Funny enough, they whitewashed both of their history. MLK was anti-imperialist. John McCain was an absolute imperialist, unapologetically so. But he has been a hero from start to finish in the eyes of the American media and the eyes of the American establishment politicians. But yet, just like MLK, just like Muhammad Ali, when you're anti-imperialist, while you're alive, you're getting shut down. They'll celebrate you after you die, though. So that's nice. But while you're alive, you're getting shut down. So thank you all so much for tuning into this special report of Mikasa Tsukasa Live. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.